But you always want to have your master CD-ROM in one before anything else. So we're going to do that now. So we plug this in here. This is the SATA cable. And it should be fun. It's always fun trying to get these in. Sometimes they go right in, and it slid right in. Right into the slot. And the other end of the SATA cable is going to go right into slot 1. And again, with SATA, it should be pretty easy to push it into the slot. If you don't force it, because if you are, you're probably putting it in upside down. So you want to line it up right. I'll see if it's right, and it went right in without a problem. So never ever force that, because you can push the motherboard, you can crack the motherboard, damage the cable, and I'm quite sure you don't want to do that. Spending money when you're spending money on something like this. The next step is to plug the hard drive into the motherboard, into the power supply. And again, you want to get the power supply. This is the motherboard power supply. We're not going to plug that in just yet. This can also be for like a fan. If this particular case doesn't have a fan, it can be to run a motherboard. Sometimes you need this plug, sometimes you don't. Right now I don't need it. So this case does not require that plug. So what I'm going to do is take one of these plugs here, and I'll take the middle one. You have two. One will be for the hard drive, which goes up top. So you take the middle one, on these two lines here, one on top, one in the middle, and you plug the middle one in. Well, you can do it however you want, but it would be a lot easier if you plug the middle one in first. And these are always fun to try to plug in too. So I'll try to move this cable out of the way and see if I can get this plugged in. I'll just unplug this. Sometimes it's easier to plug the SATA in first. Sometimes it's easier to plug the power supply in first. So I'm just going to pull this out, put the power supply in, then put that back. And this only goes in one way, so I flip it around. Sorry for all the herky-jerky camera movements. And once you line it up, bam, goes right in. Again, don't force it. It only goes in one way. You don't want to. If you crack that, you're basically damaged your hard drive. It's not going to work. So now I'll put this back. And there, it's plugged in. And later we're going to reroute these wires, make sure they're not in the way of anything. But for now, that's good enough. The next step before I put in the Blu-ray drive, I'm also going to plug in the power supply to the motherboard, because once I put the Blu-ray drive in, it's going to be a lot harder to access that part. So I just snap that right in. And again, don't force it, otherwise you could end up breaking your motherboard. You don't want to do that. I also want to plug these in. One of these is USB. One of these is HD audio. I want to make sure they're going in the right spot. So we'll do the USB first. Okay, the next step, I'm going to be installing the Blu-ray drive. The Blu-ray drive slides into this case right here, which goes into the computer case. You want to have it all the way to the first hole. I don't know if you can see this. Sorry about the camera again. There's a hole right here. There's 3 holes. If you go with this case, with this build, you want it in the first hole. That way when you put the front of the case on, it will line up. If you put it in one of the other 2 holes, it will be further back and it just won't look as good. So you want to put it in the first hole to make sure it lines up. So I'm going to get screws, and I'm going to screw this hard drive in. There's only 2 screws for this. Sometimes there's 4 depending on the motherboard, depending on the case. This one only has 2, but I'm going to take the 2 screws, put them in, and go from there. Okay, the next step, after you get your Blu-ray drive screwed down, I decided to screw them into the bottom instead of screwing into the side. You can do 6, you can put 6 screws in if you really want to, but that's going a little overboard. Now this is going to be the fun part. First thing I'm going to do before I do any of that is plug, like I did with the hard drive, plug the SATA drive, the data cord here, right there, plug the power supply right there, and then put it in. But you should probably put these in first, otherwise it's going to be a pain to try to reach in there and probably cut your hand up trying to do that. So I'm going to do that now. So I'll put this up here. I'm going to get my other SATA cable and I'll put it, be right back. Okay, now much like before, you just plug it in the same way you did with the hard drive, the SATA cable. You make sure it goes in the right way, make sure it's not upside down, and it should go right in. Just like that. And into the case. Don't force it, just like I said before, it's only going to go in one way. And like that. And there's a third one left over in case I might need it. I'll move that out of the way. So now they're both in there. Might be a little hard to see, but they're both there. Next step is trying to move these cables out of the way enough that I can get this motherboard down. Yeah, this case down. But first I want to make sure everything's plugged in. There's a fan right here. And that fan should plug somewhere onto the board. I have to look. It goes into the other side. So again, right there. I don't know if you can see that little white piece right here where my finger is. That's where the fan is going to go. Again, don't force it. It only goes in one way. And that's down in there. And now the next step is getting this in. Getting this in without, you know, want to make sure the wires are clear. That can be a bit of a pain sometimes. And, well, I forgot. I want to plug this in too. This goes to the power supply. It only goes in one way. If it doesn't go, just turn it around. And this should go right in. Just like that. So now I'm going to try to get this down. This is probably going to be another pain in the ass. One of the things that can be a pain in the ass, putting in a motherboard above my case. And we'll see how this goes. There's 4 grooves right here. 2 here and 2 here. It has to go straight down in. And then it slides to the groove in the front. But there's something in the way, so I'm going to lift it up, move some wires, and try again. Get back. Yeah, these wires are getting in the way. So I'm going to turn this off and show you once it's in. Okay, once this is in, there's little screw holes right here. 2 of them, one on each side. You want to make sure that this part is screwed in right here, because if it's not, it could slide back, and it'll just be a pain in the ass. So I'm going to do that. Screw these holes in now. And then you might wonder why I don't show you screwing stuff in. It's basically because if you know how to use a screwdriver and a screw, you just find the right size screw. It usually comes with the motherboard or the case. They give you all kinds of screws. Just match the screws up. If some screws are too big, some screws are too small. But you know, you can basically figure that out on your own. Just don't force the screw in and you strip it. Okay, now that I finally screwed this in, it took me about 5 minutes. You really have to get the screws lined up just right. And this wants to push back, so you have to hold it in place. So just be patient with it, otherwise you wind up wanting to throw it through a wall.